All right, it's time to talk about Chase Brown and why you should draft him. Okay, as things stand, Zach Moss is taking over for Joe Mixon in the Cincinnati Bengals backfield, and as the RB 30 per Fantasy Pros ADP, he looks like an awesome value. No denying that. However, it's May 21st. I really do fully expect that the ADP is going to shift greatly. I think Moss is going to really start climbing up because let's be real, if we are expecting him to be the full Joe Mixon replacement, he's going way too late for sure. So Joe Mixon was RB6 last year, top 10 fantasy running back in each of the last 3 years. He's always been pretty relevant across the board throughout his career. But obviously, since Joe Burrow arrived there, the Bengals offense has been elite, and he's had a major role. 300 touches last year, second in red zone targets, third in opportunity share, third in red zone touches. But he wasn't efficient, and he hasn't been efficient for a while. To prove that, 35th in yards created per touch, 40th in true yards per carry, and he had 0.83 fantasy points per opportunity, which isn't horrendous, but it's not elite. So he ranked 24th in that regard last year. Joe Mixon still was really good for fantasy football. If you had Joe Mixon, you weren't sad about it. He had a couple really big spike weeks, and when he wasn't spiking, he still had like 10 to 15 fantasy points most of the time because the role is so good, and obviously Mixon is decent running back. So in theory, Zach Moss comes in and takes that role, and Zach Moss is possibly a top 10 running back. The only problem is he's Zach Moss. So I'm not looking at Zach Moss. I'm looking at Chase Brown. Chase Brown is simply a better athlete. He is more explosive. He has proven college production. And he has some numbers that look pretty welcoming from last year, too. Now, this breakdown from Adam Koffler, really good fantasy analyst. I like to give shout outs anytime I can on these videos because there's so many really good, smart people out there that break things down nicely. Basically, his write up is in favor of Zach Moss. I can't blame him for that because Zach Moss was very productive for the Colts last year. And for the moment, he's sliding into this Joe Mixon role, and everything looks pretty good for him for sure. So kudos and a tip of the cap to Koffler because he's not wrong. Zach Moss right now looks like a potential stud. But if he ends up getting injured or if he's not efficient, we could be looking at Chase Brown being the better play for sure. He notes here that Chase Brown had it was Joe Mixon who had a pass blocking grade of just 29.7, and Zach Moss had a pass blocking grade of 60.4 in 2023. So that is probably the main thing that I would be concerned about if I'm going to choose Chase Brown over Zach Moss. It's a very good point. And the reason being because even Zach Taylor, head coach of the Bengals, had mentioned at one point that Chase Brown was a little bit overwhelmed in pass protection. The good news is he actually was the second best running back in his draft class at pass protection coming in, into the NFL draft. So in theory, he has the ability to overcome that and grow as a pass protector, and that could keep him on the field more. So right now, that could be playing into why he's RB2 instead of RB1. So certainly something to keep in mind if you're looking for reasons not to draft Chase Brown. But when you're looking at the athletic profile and you're looking at upside, you're looking at the role, and you're looking at where these guys are currently being drafted, and as we get more into the summer where they probably going to be drafted, Chase Brown looks like the buy, in my opinion. Here's an article on how he received high pass blocking grades. The other thing, though, is, if Chase Brown gets into this big role, you're just looking at a really explosive guy. Kyle Lindemann pointed out fastest ball carries in 2023 per Next Gen Stats. DK Metcalf, no surprise, is number one. Chase Brown, number two. That is certainly worth pointing out. Obviously, the guy had like a 4.440. He tested well athletically across the board. His main knock really was a lack of elite size. That if you look at his RAS score, where is it? Yeah, right here. If you look at his RAS score, relative athletic score for the scouting combine, where is he looking negatively? It's his height and weight. But I mean, honestly, 5'9", 5'10", and about 210, I think that's plenty big to handle a full workload if the Bengals decide to go that way with him for sure. So I have no real questions about his size. We know he's an explosive athlete. If we can get this guy more touches, we should feel pretty good about it. I want more of that. So, and with that in mind, we should also look at the underlying data for Chase Brown, which is there isn't a lot. He was a rookie, and he really didn't start playing until week 13. But from weeks 13 to 18, let me check. Where did I have it? Sorry, I lost track of it here. From weeks 13 to 18, he was 10th in rush yards after contact per attempt, 13th in receiving yards after contact, and he was 12th in fantasy points per opportunity at 0.91. So he's a more efficient player than Joe Mixon was showing to be. I think he can be a more efficient player than Zach Moss. He certainly is a better athlete and more explosive player, certainly is a better receiver. Really, the only thing he needs to fix is the pass protection. If he can fix that, Chase Brown is absolutely a threat, perhaps even in training camp, to unseat Zach Moss, and certainly at some point later in the year. Like I said, right now, the ADP, I don't think is really a true testament of where these guys are as far as value. They're only separated by 6 RB slots. So right now, Zach Moss is at RB 30 and Chase Brown's at RB 36. That's going to start separating. And as it separates, we're going to be in a situation where we start overpaying for Zach Moss and getting Chase Brown at a screaming value. So as we move into the summer, I think we need to start drafting Chase Brown.